Glad you can make it a date with us on EarthFile. Thank you for joining us. I am Ayola Kasim. A 2-week-long United Nations Climate Summit opened on Monday, the 1st of December in Lima, Peru, with experts and analysts from around the world gathering to discuss melting glaciers and extreme weather patterns. The Lima negotiations are tasked with settling on the key elements of a new global climate deal due to be finalized in Paris in a year's time, and working out how to make bigger reductions in planet warming emissions before the deal comes into force in 2020. The 20th session of the Conference of the Parties being held in Lima through December 12 brings together the 196 parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is the parent treaty of the 1997 Kyoto Protocol that covered only industrialized countries. But emissions today are rising mainly in the developing world. Today, EarthFile brings to you the focus of the first week of the conference. Do stay with us. The eve of the much anticipated United Nations Climate Change Conference, or COP20, in Lima was marked on Sunday, the 30th of November, with a somber ecumenical vigil honoring all those they say have suffered as a result of climate change. The event was organized in Lima by the country's leading faiths operating under the Interreligious Council of Peru, Religions for Peace. The night event was held near the site of the conference, which is holding in Lima from the 1st of December to the 12th. The vigil featured a host of cross-faith rituals involving candles and musical performances. Leaders from Christianity, Islam, and Judaism all took part in the event. The religious leaders on hand were emphasizing the grave mission for the conference. The role of religion and climate change is often a hotly contested one, but for Luther Church official Martin Kopp, the role of faith is to provide a catalyst to take action to combat climate change.
I'm going to say we need to change ourselves. Climate change is not only a question of techniques, it's also a question of values, it's a question of how do you look at the world, and we think that we should look at the world as something that is entrusted to us and we have to pass on to the next generations. So as a religious person, I would say to stop climate change, we need a change in ourselves. To stop the climate changing, we need us to change.
But it was the Greenpeace activists who took center stage on the eve of the annual conference to champion the use of renewable energies. 7 international activists from countries including Argentina, Brazil, and Germany organized the projection on the famous Machu Picchu temple reading Act for the Climate, Go Solar. The international NGO, which is headquartered in Amsterdam, is calling out the sources of energy it hopes the world moves away from.
Greenpeace is calling on the world leaders to transfer the energy system away from coal and oil towards a 100% renewable energy future by mid-century.
Peruvian security forces have prepared for possible scenarios that could plague the event, including mass protests. Peru's bid to host the summit was held after 2008's COP14, when it became the first developing nation to offer a voluntary emissions reduction target.
Give me the great pleasure to declare open the 20th session of the Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
On the first day, Peru's Environment Minister, who is also COP20 President, called on all delegates to remove their jackets due to air conditioning problems at the Lima venue.
But we have raised the need to bring creative and innovative solutions to this negotiation, to this debate. So let me recommend to you a first creative and innovative solution to this warmest atmosphere of this hall. So I would like to invite all of you to take out the jackets to have a Southern Hemisphere COP20 here in Lima.
At a joint news conference, the United Nations climate chief said renewable energy reduces dependence on a volatile oil market.
The fact that oil prices are so unpredictable is exactly one of the main reasons why we must move toward renewable energy, which has a completely predictable cost of zero for fuel.
To have all the pieces together to understand that we are changing, the world is changing the paradigm, and it's changing the concept of development. And we are orienting our development into sustainable, because we need to have sustainable development as the only alternative in this world.
At the same time, there is a quieter push underway to secure more of the limelight for efforts to adapt to the unavoidable effects of climate change. These include building more resilient infrastructure, putting in place disaster warning systems, and teaching farmers to harvest rainwater. Developing nations from the Pacific through sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Latin America have long called for adaptation initiatives to receive more funding, arguing they should garner half of climate finance flows. In 2013, funding for adaptation accounted for just 7% of global investment in tackling climate change. And since 2003, adaptation got only around 17% of spending approved by government-backed climate funds for developing countries. But there is growing confidence among experts that the tide is turning, not least because the fledgling Green Climate Fund, which aims to become the main global climate finance mechanism, plans to direct half its resources to adaptation over time. Another potential hot topic in Lima is whether countries should include adaptation efforts in their contributions to the New Deal. Those contributions are supposed to be put on the table early next year, but some industrialized nations have urged the offers should cover only emissions reductions. Adaptation was highlighted as a critical measure in tackling climate change at an opening session held by the ad hoc working group on the Durban Platform for Enhanced Action. The ADP is a subsidiary body of the United Nations, established in December 2011 in order to develop a legal protocol to underpin future COP conventions. Amongst those present at the session were representatives from various countries, making up the G77 plus China group, a coalition of developing nations which supports collective economic interests.
You focused your work with a view to make progress towards the 2015 agreement and to fulfill at this session in Lima the mandates that you have given yourselves in Durban and Warsaw.
The group wishes to express its full support towards helping the co-chairs secure a successful outcome to these negotiations. In this regard, the group believes that the most promising way forward lies in ensuring that the 2015 agreement treats the elements of mitigation, adaptation, finance, technology development and transfer, capacity building and transparency of actions, and support in a balanced manner.
The respective role of developing and developed nations was highlighted as an important factor in climate change measures, stressing the elevated responsibility of the latter.
This international cooperation should see developed countries doing substantially more than what they are doing or planning to do in cutting their emissions, cooperate more with developing countries through providing more financial resources, improving access to climate knowledge and technology, helping build skills and capacity, and addressing the adverse social and economic consequences of their response measures, so that developing countries would be able to do more in terms of adaptation, mitigation, and sustainable development.
Adaptation or planning for the changes which are expected to occur is considered increasingly critical in dealing with climate change, as was highlighted by a representative of the Alliance of Small Island States.
Co-chairs, discussions on adaptation are absolutely critical in moving us forward. Adaptation is about survival. We are already experiencing impacts that can no longer be mitigated and to which we can no longer adapt. Thus, loss and damage must be included as a central element of the 2015 agreement.
The World Resources Institute also announced it had coupled together a proposal aimed at helping countries reach a global climate agreement. The WRI unveiled its proposal titled Elements and Ideas for the 2015 Paris Agreement at a sidebar news conference at Climate Summit. The Agreement on Climate Transformation 2015, also known as Act 2015 Consortium, aims to provide recommendations that take into account political realities and respond to the dangerous and costly impact of climate change. WRI's proposal is the product of analysis done by 10 research institutions, hundreds of government representatives and stakeholders over a course of 12 workshops held last year.
We heard a lot of concerns from stakeholders and governments about what if a country doesn't even put forward a contribution? What happens? What if a country is way off mark with doing what it has committed to do? So we propose an actual implementation committee that would be facilitative. It would help and support countries that need it to meet their commitments that they put in. But it also would be a place where if a country hasn't done anything, that would be highlighted.
The founding partner of the New Climate Institute said the proposal would help countries reach an agreement.
The idea of this agreement is to be facilitative, to help them, to show them the opportunities on what they could do in addition. And I think there's a large opportunity of learning here in between countries. There are countries, they do quite a lot of activities, and if one can learn from each other, that is definitely one of the functions that this agreement could give. So analyzing which countries are doing certain elements and transferring them to other countries. So I think this facilitative element of making country-specific recommendations can work, but as you said, it cannot force the governments to do anything. It's a recommendation they can take or not.
Institutions from Belgium, China, Germany, Mali, the Netherlands, Nigeria, the Philippines, the United Kingdom, and the United States took part in the effort. A recent UN report said governments could keep climate change in check at manageable costs, but will have to cut greenhouse gas emissions to zero by 2100 to limit fast worsening risk. The 40-page synthesis, summing up 5,000 pages of work by 800 scientists already published since September 2013, said global warming was now causing more heat extremes, downpours as it defined the oceans and pushing up sea levels. The UN's weather agency said record high ocean temperatures will make 2014 the hottest year on record, or at least among the very warmest, in evidence of a long-term trend of global warming.
Comparing January to October 2014 to earlier years, if November and December maintain the same global temperature anomaly value, the best estimates for 2014, according to this measure, would place it as the warmest year on record.